Shifting focus to Indonesia, we're learning that at least 8 people have died and another 20 have gone missing following violent protests that have gripped cities across the country over the past week. Protests first erupted on the 25th of August. They were prompted by anger over the perks and benefits given to lawmakers, including a controversial housing allowance. Public outrage escalated when a 21-year-old motorcycle taxi driver was run over by a police vehicle at a protest site. Unrest spread from Jakarta to other cities as well, and Indonesia now sees the most violent protests in decades. President Prabowo Subianto has since scrapped some of the perks given to lawmakers to ease tensions. Meanwhile, the Indonesian police fired tear gas into crowds near the campuses of the Islamic University of Bandung and the Pasundan University to curb the protests. With us on the broadcast is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, Senior Strategic and Defense Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. The Indonesian people had high hopes from Prabowo Subianto, someone who's had an extensive military as well as political background, back when they voted him to power late last year. However, things seem to have spiraled out of control very soon. It's barely been about 10 months since he was sworn in, and protests are already spreading across cities in Indonesia. A lot of the rhetoric that we see that people plaster onto the walls, their spray painting, is the same rhetoric that is used by protesters in the United States of America. What do you make of what is transpiring in the Southeast Asian nation?
Thank you for this very important discussion today. What happens is that in any society or any form of governance, if there is inequality and perception for inequality as far as the elites are concerned, there is bound to be frustration among the people. And when this frustration comes in, it is bound to be ignited by vested elements. It could be outside powers, it could be inside powers who are wanting to derive a political mileage out of it. So, what happens here is that this anger can get transformed with a small incident or a single incident where if in case a protest is on and there is a casualty like this of a rider who was on a motorcycle, if it has happened that way, so that can be a trigger because the anger gets triggered by a very small incident, and we have seen this happening in many such cases within our own country also. Whenever protests are there, it just takes a small spark to ignite the whole thing, and then it spirals out of control. Right now is the most important for the president is that he should be able to placate the anger of the people. He has to bring in certain reforms. He has to carry out an outreach, especially you see these protests are not only limited to students. Uh, uh, there has been a polarization now, and protest diffusion is the first I'm in action I would actually suggest, and it can be built up in two parts, a short term and a long term. In the terms of short term, he needs to address this particular kind of reforms where as you mentioned, housing allowances are inflated and lawmakers are actually getting much more than they actually deserve. So we must bring a kind of a parity. So in the first 72 hours, it is very important that whosoever are missing or where the deaths have been reported, there has to be a proper investigation into it, and efforts have to be made to locate those missing persons because it could be something like enforced disappearances as they happen. Whenever there are the riots, they tend to focus on a set of leaders and to whisk them off. So, this kind of action, I think the government will have to take, and especially the journalists and the researchers who have been found missing, because that could spiral out beyond the reach of the government. Today, we are hearing 20, it could be actually much more. Then all the human rights NGOs must get into touch with the police authorities and try to locate these people who have gone missing. Uh, the next aspect is there has to be a policy which has to be laid out at the shortest time possible for a transparent investigation into this all these incidents which have taken place, so that the people know that the government is well meaning. As you said, the president has just been elected around 10 months back, so it is perceived that he is a popular vote, unless those elections were rigged. So, in case we presume that president has been elected by the people and he is popular among the people, I think these kind of measures will have to be taken by him and bring the situation under control. Because the first aspect is to bring the situation under control. Whatever the protesters are, whatever they are demanding, those demands have to be listened to. Because unless you do that, I think the situation go out of hand.
Indeed, Major General Kochar, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective. As you had stated, the situation had become so dire to the point where the Indonesian president, in fact, cancelled his visit to China. He did not attend the SCO summit. In the meantime, he stayed back, he'd made concessions, he has agreed to cut the lawmakers' benefits. But whether this will allay the fears in the common people, will the situation improve? That remains to be seen. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, that's all we have for this